Hi everybody, this is going to be a little quick video to get you going on starting your digital Notans. So by now you know that Notans are a Japanese design concept involving the placement of light and dark elements. This is at its most basic form, kind of like a yin and yang. Now you're going to be playing with this idea of negative and positive space, of composition, arranging all of your objects around the square, creating balance and playing with symmetry. You're also going to have a theme. So whatever theme you choose is up to you, but all of the objects that you choose to use within your composition are going to somehow be related to each other. Now, I'm going to switch that to inches so that I know what I'm doing. I'm going to make this a perfect square just to continue to kind of play off of the square theme. 15 by 15, 300 resolution. Go ahead and create that. So I'm going to try to go quickly because you guys are all getting much more familiar with Photoshop. Most important thing is that we are going to be working in layers. And some of you kind of forgot that or chose not to, and this is a project where you have to. So I'm going to make sure that I am not starting on my background. I'm going to keep my background pure. So my first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer, and that layer is checkered, indicating to me it's transparent. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to get my rectangle marquee. Now, if your tools are long and skinny, you're welcome to keep them that way, or you're welcome to double them up so they look like mine. Your rectangle marquee is a selection tool. So anything that you see those marching ants running around, that's indicating to you that that is a selected area, and whatever you choose to do will only happen inside that area. Now, to make a perfect square, I'm going to hold Shift and then I'm going to pull out a square. The size of your square is not exact, but I want you to take note of this. It's about 1/3 of the size of the canvas. So I could go, here's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And no, it's not 100% perfect. Then I'm going to get my paint bucket, choose black because traditional Notans are black, and I'm going to pour my canvas. Then I'm going to pour my paint bucket. Then I'm going to press Control D. So I've got my square on top of my new layer. Now, if I want to then rearrange or move this to make sure that it's perfectly centered, I'm able to do so. You might have some little guidelines pop up that are going to help you do that. So there it's perfectly centered. Now, as you start working with this project, it's going to start expanding out. And if you need to make a bigger canvas, we can do that. The first thing you're going to do is you are going to expand this out somewhere, and you are going to do that by, again, using your rectangle marquee tool. And I'm going to not make a perfect circle, but I'm going to make a little rectangle that's going to pop out of this side. Now, if you notice, I made sure that I went over the edge because as I flip this, I need to make sure I preserve those little corners right there. So to cut this out, I'm going to press Control X. Now, if your screen is down, you can always come up here to edit and use your selection from your menu bar, and there's cut right there, and you can see the shortcuts to everything right here. But I'm going to just use my keyboard and press Control X. So it cut it out. Then I'm going to press Control V, and you're going to see that it pastes it on its own layer. Now it's hiding because it's underneath. So I closed the eye to be able to see it. Then I'm going to grab my move tool, and I am going to move this somewhere where I know I'm going to be able to find it. So with this shape, I don't have to flip it because I know that if I flip it, it's not going to matter. It's a perfectly symmetrical shape. You can also use your up and down arrows to really kind of refine how close you get. So you're trying to really get close on those two corners to make everything touch. All right, so now what I've done is I have created 2 more edges. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4 edges to work on, I now have 5, 6. So it gives me more room for more objects or images that I'm going to be arranging on my Notan. I'm going to go down back to my very base layer, my original square, and actually I'm going to name this square. I did that by double clicking on that layer 1, and I'm going to rename this square. The reason I want to do that is because I have to keep finding that original square as I move forward. Next tool you're going to be working with is your lasso tool. Now your lasso tool is also a selection tool. You have your regular lasso, I call it the soft lasso, and then you have a polygonal lasso. Soft lasso is going to allow you to draw shapes that are more organic and free-flowing. It's also going to allow you to freehand draw things. Then you've got your polygonal lasso. That one you might not use as much because it is straight lines set down with anchors. This is the one you're primarily going to be using on this project. So for this one, you are going to want your stylus pen. Now, let's say you want to start drawing and you're like, I'm just not sure exactly where to go. You need to be considerate of how big your shape is. So if I want to make a shape right here and I want to take up this space, but I make it so big that then when I flip it over, it's going to be too big for the space, the negative space that it's flipping into. So for example, if I want to draw, let's just say I draw a heart just to be super generic. I would draw half of it, close it up, and then I would press Control X and then Control V, hide it, find it, move it so I can get it out of the way and figure out where I'm at. Then I would press Control T. Then I would right click and press Flip Horizontal. Now if I go like this, I'm overlapping right here, and that's not good. You want everything to have enough space to exist inside its either positive or negative space. So right here, I've got overlap, and that's just not going to work. So I am going to take this back right there, and I did Control Z to take that back. So I think I want to do a kind of like a nature theme. So I'm going to draw a little, whoops, excuse me. I need to get my lasso tool. I need to be on my square. And I'm going to draw a little leaf. And I'm going to draw kind of like a thin leaf, little stem. I'm just drawing half of it. That way, if I press Control X and Control V, hide it, find it, move it so I can work with it. Then I press Control T to transform, right click, flip horizontal. And then I'm able to start aligning it with my edge. And that's not perfect, so I'm going to go back. I'm using my arrows up and down to try to get this as close as possible. I'm kind of close. Not. Okay, that's a little better. Arrows. Okay, so I don't even have to Control T to do that. Your arrows can move things. So there's my little leaf. Now I could go in here and say, well, I want to do some little details. Like maybe I want to, I've got to get my lasso tool. Maybe I want to add some like little shapes and I want to cut them out and flip them over here. You can do that. So as you continue to work with this project, you're going to be putting your shapes on edges, making sure there's enough negative space for it to flip into. You're going to be arranging them around your 6 edges. Again, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now let's say you want to trace something. And I know that this little image I'm going to put in doesn't have anything to do with a nature theme, but for the sake of a tutorial, it's not going to matter. Let's say I'm doing a Viking helmet and I want to use the logo that we have at the school. What I'm able to do is I went File, Place, Embedded, and I'm finding the logo that I want. And I'm going to put it wherever I want this logo to be. And again, if you need more canvas space, like imagine this flips over and let's say you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough space, we can expand your canvas. So I'm going to set that down. This is Control T. So I'm allowed to, resize this and make it as big as I want. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the image I want to trace and I'm going to pull it under the square. Then my square, I'm going to lessen the opacity so I can see through to the image I want to trace. All I'm doing is I'm changing how solid or transparent it is by changing the opacity. So here's a few new things about your lasso tool. Up here, you have some options. This option will allow you to cut out from the inside. This one is just going to give you the outer edge. What I'd like you to try is to try using some of these different selections and see what happens. So this first one, I'm going to zoom in. And you can zoom in by, oh, stop screen. What are you doing? There you go. You can do a couple different ways. You can hold Alt and use the rolly ball on your mouse, or you also can use your magnifying glass and zoom in and out. So I'm going to start tracing this Viking helmet, and I'm going to try to go quickly so I'm not wasting your time, because I want to show you a few things. Now remember, it has to go over the edge because it's got to line up. I'm doing a really not so great job. Okay, so I've got my outer edge. Now I could just flip that, but it's just going to be a basic shape and I'm not going to have all this cool detailed information. So what I want to do now is I want to grab this one where I'm able to cut out from it. And this should allow me to then select things that I want to stay down. So let's say I want that to stay down. And let's say I want, and this is a lot of detail. So if you're kind of like, wow, I don't know. Let's say you want that to stay down. And let's say you want this to stay down. Maybe we want this part to stay down. And maybe I want this to stay down. And hopefully you get the idea of what I'm doing. So now when I press Control X and then Control V, hide it, Control T, find it, move it a little bit, right click, flip horizontally. Maybe I might even just set it somewhere so that I can put this guy back in. I can hide my Viking. I can make this 100% pure opacity. Then I can come back up here to that layer I was working on that I just moved over, and I can start lining it up using my arrows. So now I've got a complete mirrored image of my Viking. So as much as I want you to freehand draw things in this class, it's also okay for you to use visual references and trace, especially if you're working with something that's, kind of complex. So hopefully that this gives you some ideas of how you are going to do this project. Now, again, you're working in layers. This is just hidden in here. So if I wanted to continue to add more stuff in, I can, or if I'm like, nope, I'm done with that, I can right click and I can say delete layer, and it's going to tell me you want to delete it. And I say, yep. So that's going to allow me to get rid of that one thing. If you are working on this project and you're in progress, you need to save it as a PSD. You'd come up here and you go File, Save As on your computer. Hopefully I'm not telling you anything new. You would go down to that DigArt Y folder, go to green, go to your second period folder, finding your name. This is going to be in your, I don't even know if I have one in here. There it is. You're going to make a week 4 folder for this because we are now in week 4. And I would like you to name this Notan. Saving it as a Photoshop document. That's going to leave it in layers so that you're able to continue to work on it. Now, if you're done, I'm going to say cancel. Let's say I'm done. What I need to do is I need to come up here and go Layer, Flatten Image. Then I'm coming up to File, Save As on your computer. Again, going to that folder that you know you need to, and you're going to be saving this as a JPEG. Now, the reason I want you to be doing JPEGs is not because I don't think that you can save things in a PNG. It's because it's easier for me to open it up in Google, and I grade from your Google Classrooms. So as you are turning stuff in, it is easier and faster for me to grade JPEGs. So naming this as Notan, and then making sure it is the JPEG option that is the first one, and save.